This is no longer paddock gossip or media speculation. Alpine has now officially confirmed that Christian Horner is part of an investor group that has expressed interest in purchasing the 24% stake in the team currently owned by Otro Capital. That confirmation matters, because it finally clarifies how Horner intends to return to Formula One following his dismissal from Red Bull in mid-2025. It also explains why every previous route back onto the grid quietly collapsed. Aston Martin and Haas were both explored, but neither progressed, not because of salary, prestige, or competitive ambition. The issue was far simpler than that. Horner does not want to return to Formula One as a conventional employee. After spending 20 years running Red Bull, he has no interest in becoming a team principal whose authority can ultimately be overridden by shareholders or a boardroom. Horner's target is now far more specific. He wants meaningful equity, genuine structural power, and, crucially, veto rights over the long-term direction of the team. The model he is pursuing is obvious. Toto Wolff at Mercedes, with roughly a 33% ownership stake, operational control, and a level of job security that is not dependent on a single poor season or an internal political shift. In that context, Alpine represents the most logical opportunity available. Otro Capital has openly explored selling its stake. Renault remains the majority owner, and the 2026 regulations offer a complete competitive reset. If Horner enters as a shareholder, this is not simply a return to Formula One. It is a return on his own terms, with a level of authority he never formally held at Red Bull. The key question now is whether this is a calculated attempt to rebuild Horner's career from a position of strength, or a carefully structured act of revenge on Red Bull, executed not through words, but through ownership and power. If you want to understand where this story is really heading, make sure you're subscribed, because this is where the details start to matter. What Alpine has done here is remove ambiguity. In its official statement, the team confirmed that one of the parties to express an interest is a group of investors, which also includes Christian Horner. It stressed that discussions are taking place with the existing shareholders, Otro Capital, which owns 24%, and Renault Group, which retains the remaining 76%. Importantly, Alpine also clarified that these discussions are not being conducted with the team itself or with Flavio Briatore, but strictly at shareholder level. That distinction matters. This is not Horner angling for a job. This is Horner positioning himself as part of the ownership structure. And that alone explains why this Alpine route has progressed further than anything else since his Red Bull exit. Since being dismissed last summer, Horner has been linked to multiple teams. Aston Martin was widely discussed, as was Haas. But in every case, the same obstacle emerged. Horner was not interested in a traditional team principal role. According to multiple reports, he wanted equity, decision-making authority, and long-term security. Without that, talks stalled. From Horner's perspective, this is entirely logical. At Red Bull, he spent 2 decades building one of the most successful operations in modern Formula One. 8 drivers' titles, 6 constructors' championships, and a structure that he effectively ran end-to-end. Yet, when internal politics shifted and performance dipped, he was removed without owning any part of the entity he had helped create. That experience has clearly shaped his thinking. Ownership changes the balance of power. A shareholder cannot simply be removed in the same way as an employee, and that is why the comparison with Toto Wolff keeps coming up. Wolff's position at Mercedes is fundamentally different to that of a conventional team principal. He owns around a third of the team. He answers to partners, not to a single corporate parent. His influence extends beyond day-to-day operations into long-term strategy, investment, and governance. That structure has given Mercedes stability through competitive highs and lows. Horner wants something similar. Not identical, but functionally comparable. A stake large enough to matter. Influence that cannot be casually overridden. And a role that does not disappear the moment results fluctuate or politics shift. Alpine, for all its problems, offers that opening. Otro Capital acquired its 24% stake in 2023 for a figure reported at around €200 million. Since then, Formula One team valuations have risen sharply. Otro has publicly acknowledged exploratory talks to sell, and Alpine itself has confirmed that multiple investor groups have shown interest. That creates a rare opportunity. A significant minority stake is available. The majority owner, Renault, remains committed to the project, and the timing aligns with a regulation reset that could reshape the competitive order. Flavio Briatore's comments underline how this process is unfolding. Speaking after the launch of Alpine's 2026 car, he said that Otro wants to sell the participation in Alpine, and that a few groups are interested to buy 24%. He added that once someone buys that stake, Renault still have 74 to 75%, and we discuss. Crucially, he also stated, first, you need to buy Otro, and after Renault needs to accept the buyer. Briatore has been keen to distance himself from the negotiations, repeatedly stressing that Horner is negotiating with Otro, not with Alpine management. I've known Christian for many years, Briatore said. I talk with Christian anyway, but this has nothing to do with me. That distancing is telling. It reinforces the idea that this is not a personal favour or a backroom arrangement. It is a structural play conducted at shareholder level, subject to approval by Renault. For Alpine, the situation is delicate. The team is coming off one of the worst seasons in its modern history, finishing last in the Constructors' Championship. It has closed its Viry-Châtillon engine program and will become a Mercedes customer from 2026. Management has been unstable, with multiple leadership changes in a short period of time. Yet that very instability may be what makes Horner attractive. He has built teams before. He understands how to attract talent, how to impose structure, and how to navigate Formula One's political environment. From Alpine's point of view, having someone like Horner invested financially rather than simply employed could be seen as a long-term stabilising force. But this is where the narrative becomes more complex. Because while this move can be framed as a sensible career rebuild, it is impossible to ignore the undertone of revenge. Horner's exit from Red Bull was not just a professional separation, it was the end of a 2-decade partnership that defined an era. Red Bull has since moved on, installing Laurent Mekies and reshaping its leadership. Performance improved in the latter part of 2025, reinforcing the view inside the company that change was necessary. Horner, meanwhile, has been left to plot his return from the outside, and rather than stepping back in quietly as a hired hand, he is attempting to re-enter the sport with more power than he ever formerly had before. This is not revenge in the emotional sense. There are no public outbursts, no interviews settling scores. Instead, it is revenge through structure, through ownership, through ensuring that if he builds something again, he cannot simply be pushed aside. The irony is difficult to miss. Horner, once the face of Red Bull's opposition to Mercedes, could return at the helm of an Alpine team running Mercedes power. The man who spent years criticising Renault engines could re-enter the sport via a team that has abandoned its own power unit program entirely. None of this guarantees success. Buying 24% of Alpine does not automatically grant control. Renault remains the majority owner, Briatore remains influential, and Formula One history is littered with examples of talented leaders undone by complex governance structures. But what is clear is that Horner's ambition has shifted. He is no longer chasing a job. He is chasing leverage. This Alpine move, if it happens, would not simply be a comeback. It would be a redefinition of his role in Formula One. From team principal to power broker, from employee to owner, from being vulnerable to politics, to shaping them. And that is why this story matters beyond Alpine itself. It speaks to a broader shift in Formula One, where influence increasingly flows through ownership rather than titles. Where the most powerful figures are those with equity, not just authority. So the question is this: is Christian Horner about to engineer the most calculated comeback in modern Formula One, using Alpine as a platform to regain control and relevance? Or is this the start of a new power struggle that could consume a team already fighting for stability? Let me know what you think. Is this a masterstroke or a risk too far? Drop your view in the comments below.